Well, welcome back to the Reality Halfway House. Today we're going to be talking about money. Got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. We are caught between extremely weird financial realities. This is the Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. So yeah, earlier this week I was kind of going off on a little bit of a rant, just kind of talking about the doom and gloom of everything going on in society today. It seems like at the end of kind of any rabbit hole that we go down today, and I think most of us are kind of guilty of that to some degree or another with doom scrolling and everything else, we find this kind of cesspool of depression, this underlying sense of depression. There's that gal that's out there that was that's in the news, and I'm not going to go into it, that's suffering from postpartum depression, and it's like there begs the question, it's like what kind of depression are we all facing out there, and then how do we react to that depression? And I think a lot of it is just that people are exhausted, man. I mean, and we've talked about that multiple times throughout the course of this podcast. And I think, the whole premise behind the podcast, this Reality Halfway House, and we've talked about this before, but just to kind of rehash that again for new folks that may be listening, a halfway house is just like, if you're familiar, is really a kind of a transitional point. So if you get somebody that's been arrested, they go to jail, and they're trying to get reintegrated back into society. And so they get put into this living environment where they can kind of transition back into the quote-unquote real world. Well, right now, we're in this weird spot to where we've got this like old world that we used to live in. And I don't know where the threshold's at. I mean, you could say it's 2020 COVID, you could say it's 9/11, you could say it's 2008 and the housing crash. I mean, there's 2012 when the world was supposed to end with the Mayan calendar. I mean, there's so many different points where, well, it could be. And, I've seen videos that said, oh, well, the world did stop back in 2012 when the Mayan calendar, went off, that we're actually in a new timeline, I mean, there's a zillion different ways you could go with this, right? But suffice it to say is that something is different. I know from when I grew up to where we are now, and I'm a millennial, right? An elder millennial from the late 1900s, back in the 80s even. And so, I mean, this is not the same world that I grew up in. And so I can see now that we're in transition to something else, right? We're in transition from this old world, which requires that we're mourning that old world, right? We're in this state of mourning, like, man, I miss the old thing. Because if you talk especially to millennials in particular, and I'm extra sensitive to that because I is one of them, millennials are really nostalgic. It's like I talked in the last episode about how cool it would be to go back to 1995. It's like I'll buy the first ticket on the on the DeLorean. If you could just drop me off in 1995, that would be great. And actually, I think in 1985, yeah, I mean that would be basically where it would go if it's going 30 years in the past. Just drop me back off in 95. I'll be cool. I'll find the fish under the sea dance or whatever. And I'll figure it out. It'll be all right. But all of that to say, we've got the state of nostalgia for something that we miss, like heartfelt, like we miss, the simplicity of things. It's like you would log onto the internet, but then you'd log off, and the options. I mean, you didn't have anything. Like social media didn't exist. The algorithms, probably were there, to some degree, but not to the degree that they are now. Or the algorithms back in the day, the cookies and stuff, right? Anyway, all I can say is that then today, people are still trying to go through and to run this cycle, right? We're trying to go through and to fulfill some sort of a role that is going to lead to an outcome that we want, right? Because that's what we saw our parents do, and that's what we were told is going to happen to us. You go to school for all these years, you get the degree, you're going to get a job, you're going to climb the ladder, you're going to make some money, you're going to be able to buy that vacation home, and you'll be able to pass, money down to your kids, et cetera, and it's all good in the hood kind of a thing, right? Well, at the end of the day right now, people are struggling. And I saw this compilation. Some of these videos I'd seen before, some of them were new. but I saw this compilation, and I wanted to play a couple of minutes of it because you get to really hear, if you're not familiar with kind of other people talking about it, I feel like unless you've just been living under a rock and, you don't go to the grocery store and, you're Amish, which of course you're Amish, you're not listening to this anyway. This is just kind of an overarching lament, a proverbial groan from some of your contemporaries and peers that are out there living in the real world.
So what are we doing? Are we just quitting our jobs and living off the government now, or what? Because our jobs are not enough to pay the freaking bills. Buy the groceries, pay for the gas, and buy all the things you gotta have to live. And going out and having fun. You hang that up because it ain't happening on the paycheck. I have to go take me out a whole ass loan just to live life. I mean, at this point, we just living to work, and there ain't nowhere to live because we ain't living. I mean, at least I'm not.
So when do we stop being broken? Can anybody answer that? Because it seems like the longer we go, the worse it gets. This isn't even a political thing. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on. It's only been getting worse every year for, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 decades. If you look at other nations, it almost seems like as the time goes, their nation gets better. Not just with technology, but with society and also their economy. And yet somehow we have cameras that can zoom in on your neighbor doing weird shit in their yard, and our economy still sucks.
My mom sent me an article 2 weeks ago that said 49% of people under the age of 30 in the United States are living at home with their parents. Not that we should ever compare, but use that metric to either feel good about yourself for maybe not being at home with your parents, or telling yourself, hey, it's okay. There are millions of other people in the same position as me if you are living at home with your parents. Everything's okay.
I don't want to pay rent anymore. So I've come up with an absolutely genius plan to avoid paying rent. I'm going to live in the woods. I've got everything that I need to survive in the back of this car. Yeah, buddy.
So here we are.
Dude's going Grizzly Adams, man.
Most Americans have not gotten better this year in terms of the cost of living, with their wages, with their rent or their mortgage, with their taxes that they're paying, the grocery bills, child care costs. Everything is going up so much, and people are really continuing to wake up and ask themselves the question: what is going to happen if prices continue to go up? And I'm so glad that people are asking this question because prices right now are going to continue to go up. And what are we going to do?
I am the kind of middle class that is too rich for food stamps, but too poor to eat food.
Me and my wife, we make like we're in the middle class, right? Lower to middle class. And we have two kids that are under 2 years old. We both work full time, which is the problem. Actually, I'll get to that. But we were getting quoted, have been getting around $3,000 per month to watch our kids in daycare. And our mortgage is almost half of that. And so basically we're left with about I don't know $1,500 to pay the rest of our bills and feed our family. And guess what? We don't qualify for any benefits or anything like that because we make too much. It's the worst predicament I've ever seen in my life. What are we supposed to do? Honestly, I'm not trying to come off rude or anything, but I just don't understand how it's like this. We need help, dude.
They said.
Yeah, and that video goes on for a while, and there's lots of them out there, man. It's so hard to watch because the thing is, we're all in this thing together, right? It's unless, again, like I said, unless you're just not going to the grocery store or just leaving the house, you're in a situation to where every single time you go to the grocery store, it's just a little bit more and just a little bit more and just a little bit more. It's bananas, man. Nobody can afford anything. We talked about this, a couple of days ago on the podcast. People are foregoing the things that they want, right? And they're just getting the things that they need. But the problem that we're seeing is that now people are soon or right now, and it's already starting to happen, where people are having to forego the things that they need. They're starting to have to prioritize. It's like, okay, well, what do we want? Do we want to eat or do we want electricity? I mean, It's crazy to me. It is crazy to me that we're in this predicament like we are right now. And I was talking to my buddy the other day, who's a boomer. We were out working on my vehicle, and we were talking about how, you know, the country's in kind of a disarray and this, that, and the other. And I told him, I was like, look, man, you know, in terms of bubbles and so forth, I mean, the markets are getting they're grossly overinflated, like all of them. You're starting to see movements in Japan where they're going through and liquidating some of their fixed income because they hold enormous amounts of U.S. debt. And when I went to school, again, my degree's in finance. I was a finance major. They always called the U.S. Treasuries riskless securities, specifically short-term debt, because they said that that these bonds and bills, like the short-term debt in particular, are backed by full faith and credit of the U.S. government. And the joke used to always be, as soon as they would teach it, all the professors would say it. I mean, it was scripted. It was crazy. They say, well, because if the U.S. government fails, then nothing's going to be worth it. So, and we'd all laugh, you know. But really. The thing is, when we look at this economy today, we can see, or at least I can see, and I think a lot of my contemporaries within this industry can see, that it's like somebody has taken a center block and put it on the accelerator of this country, and they're just revving and redlining the engine until it just explodes. You know, when back during COVID, 2021, they started sending out those stimulus checks, and everybody's like, oh, give me that $1,200, give it to me. And I told my wife and my friends at that time, I said, dude, you're going to hate that $1,200 check here in about 3 or 4 years. When inflation starts running rampant, you're going to hate it. And it's not that I'm a psychic or that I have a crystal ball. That's economics 101, man. You know, if you start going through and just printing money that we don't have to go through and send out all these checks to quote unquote stimulate the economy, right? Quantitative easing and all this other BS. If you go through and do that, you're just going to go through and to deflate the value of that dollar, right? You're going to make it worth less, right, than it was before. So we see inflation going up and things costing more. It's not that something costs more, it's that the dollar is worth less. I mean, it's the same difference, but the reality is your purchasing power is less than it was. I'm not giving you any new revelation. This is not some sort of like crazy new news. This is just economics 101. And the thing is, everybody's like, oh, well, you know, I want this universal basic income, or I want, you know, fill in the blank. But we can't. We literally can't afford it. And our nation is overinflated, and everybody's like, yeah, but you know, the Dow's doing good. Yeah, the S&P's way up and so forth. And it's like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean at the end of the day? Like, you've got these people talk. It's like she said, she's like, I'm the kind of middle class that's too rich for food stamps, but too poor to eat. It's like, hello, like anybody else, anybody home? And the thing is, we're supposed to be these good little Americans, you know, good little like worker bees. And we're supposed to get out there and we're supposed to just chug away. You know, like I saw this guy talking about how he was this morning. I was drinking my coffee and he was like, man, he's like, so my lease is up after 2 years. And so I'm starting on the apartment hunt. And I've been seeing people talk about how expensive renting is. And I had no idea because I hadn't been looking, you know, I just was in a 2-year lease. And he's like, man, they want like $2,100 for like a 1-bedroom apartment. He's like, I'm not spending $2,100. And then he said, so people tell me, so we'll just go buy something. Okay, so let's say I found something for $1,600. That's base, but then you've got insurance and all this other kind of stuff on top of that. So you end up spending way more than $2,100. And he's like, that's not what I want to do. So he said, I found a listing where the price is a little bit lower. And he said, I was getting ready to go today, to go through and to look at that listing. And I got a call from the real estate agent or whoever, and they said, we're going to have to reschedule because somebody got shot and murdered at that apartment complex last night. So your options are, and God rest his soul, I mean, I'm not trying to make light of that. That's awful. But so your choices are, you're going to go live in a place where people get shot because that's what you can afford. you're going to go and you're going to live in a 2-bedroom place. Now, I don't know his market, or a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom place for $2,200 a month. That's insane, man. That's insane. My first apartment was $400 a month, and I had a roommate. It was a 2-bedroom, $400 a month. It was nothing fancy, first apartment, right? But my half of it was $200 a month, right? And that apartment, just guessing, was probably like 1,200 square feet for my half, $200 a month. And then with utilities and everything else, I was probably out $450 to $500 a month, maybe, for my first apartment. And now people are coming up with $2,100 for rent only before all the utilities and everything else that goes along with it. I mean, people can't do it. They can't do it. And then if you've got kids, it's compounded even more. You're caught in this, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Just like that guy was saying, he's like, man, he said, we've been getting quotes on daycare for $1,500 a child. That's $3,000 for both of their kids. $3,000 for 2 kids. That's insane to me. You know, we were really fortunate with our kid, our youngest, in that we found a gal in our neighborhood that she had a little daycare just at her house, and it was like $100 a week. So like $400 a month. I mean, that was 6-7 years ago, but still, like, I mean, $400 a month. I mean, that's more than what our car payment was. I mean, that was still $400 a month at the time, was still hard, you know. I can't even fathom $3,000 a month. And the thing is, it's just like, you can't go to work if you don't have anybody to watch your kids. But then if you stay home and watch the kids, then you have to forego the income. It's just this double-edged sword. And then, of course, people are, you know, you're supposed to be saving every single month, putting money away for a rainy day. You're supposed to be saving for your kids' retirements. Again, I was a financial advisor and a stockbroker, so I would sit down with people and talk about planning for their financial future and so forth. And there's this whole thing. So a lot of people have heard of Dave Ramsey, right? So, you know, he's a big radio guy, you know, out of Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. And he talks about his baby steps. Like, you know, I mean, he's been on the radio and he has a bunch of books for, you know, over 20 years. And I just wanted to kind of run through this because run through his baby steps, not to poo-poo on them, because I think that there's a lot of fundamental. I've had many conversations with people over the years about the baby steps. But I feel like today, somebody coming up to somebody today and saying, hey, are you doing the envelope system? Are you doing the baby steps? It's like almost insulting. It's kind of like if you've ever read or listened to or learned anything about kind of the Dale Carnegie approach, you know, how to win friends and influence people. I went through and read that book, right, whenever I was managing money. And the thing is, it's so antiquated because people don't act that way anymore. Like if you walked up to a Gen Z today, not all of them, but you know, the vast majority, just because of where they've grown up, they haven't grown up with social interaction. So to try to go through and win friends and influence people, you're going to come across as tone deaf based on that kind of line of reasoning. And there's a lot of those which would have worked phenomenally well even 10, 15, 20 years ago are now completely like devoid. And there's good stuff in there, and it breaks my heart that we're not able to use it. But I wanted to kind of illustrate and point out the Dave Ramsey system really quick because, you know, I've been out hunting and looking for jobs, and I've seen them show up on kind of the job list one of them in particular this morning I was looking at, and it was reminded of the 7 baby steps, which I think are really good. Again, I've talked about it, and I'm just using Grok here to kind of go through this, but it says the core takeaway of Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps is to save money, pay off debt, and build wealth sequentially. You must complete each step fully before moving on to the next. And I'm just going to kind of give you the breakdown, and I'm not promoting it in terms of like, you know, his system or anything. It's universally accepted as kind of a good way to get yourself out of debt and put yourself in a good financial position. And there's a bunch of different ancillary programs that are out there like this. But step number 1, according to this program, is you're just going to save $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. Do you know how long that would take today? Like everybody's working 2 or 3 jobs. like there's more month at the end of the money all the time. Like she said, I make too much to qualify for food stamps, but not enough to eat. Where's the $1,000? And if you can't, if every subsequent step is predicated on the completion of the prior step, you're stuck on step one for months and months and months. You know, it takes a long time to get to $1,000 if you're putting away $50 a month, if you can even do that, right? Step number 2 is to pay off all debt except for your house using the debt snowball. Again, I read this book when I was in college, early 2000s, and I was like, man, this is great. I was doing this in college because I had enough left over to be able to start making my way through the baby steps. And I didn't have a ton of debt, so that also made it a little easier. But all that to say, you list out all your debts from smallest to largest. You pay the minimums on everything except for the smallest, and then you throw all your extra cash at the smallest debt. Again, where's this extra cash to be able to do that, right? Where is the extra cash to be able to throw at the debt? Most people, again, like some people were saying, I had to take out debt just to keep my head above water. And more people are starting to do it. I saw a stat the other day that said the banks, there's some whistleblowers coming out from banks saying, dude, we've got so many like mortgages that people are behind on. Like if there's so many of them, we can't even start foreclosing because we don't know what we do with them. Like there's so much. And if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, The Big Short, I mean, the canary in the coal mine is laying dead on the floor. I mean, we're in a big problem that people don't realize. Okay. Step number 3, you have 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. So the premise there is you're going to put that in a high yield savings account that's super liquid. In other words, you're not investing that in stocks or bonds or gold or silver. It's liquid is what they're suggesting. Again, I've had these conversations with clients over the years. This is great advice. Great advice. I mean, think about how your peace of mind, the whole premise behind this is that your peace of mind is reduced, right? Because it's like you've got a shitty job and you're there and it's like, you know what? They're not going to talk to me like this anymore. It's not working. I'm being screwed over. I'm out. So now you have 3 to 6 months to go through and find yourself another job to where you're able to take your time and interview and really work it out. Again, that begged the question, who has enough left over at the end of the day to be able to go through and to save for 3 to 6 months? There are people out there that are doing it, but I saw a video this morning, again, drinking my coffee. This gal was lamenting the fact, she's like, I'm out looking for jobs right now. And she's like there, and I don't know the job. It may be commensurate with that job and experience, but she did bring up a valid point. It was a director level job, and the starting pay was $19 an hour. And she's like, what do you want me to direct for $19 an hour? She's like, that's insane. Now, look, maybe it's applicable and it's commensurate for that job, but that does bring up a lot of, it raises some red flags to me, because if you do have a director level job and you're basically expecting them to do it for that little, it's like, what? I was working for a firm a few years ago, and they were in the process of consolidating all of the jobs from New York to Nashville, because it was the cost of living in Nashville at that time anyway was substantially less than New York. And so they basically told all the people in New York, look, you can either go through and move and take a cut in pay and keep your job, but you're going to have a cut in pay, or your job, it's going to be transferred to Nashville. Well, we came in there, and one of the jobs, one of the gals, it was very disorganized. I don't know how to describe this job other than it was just a chaotic mess, right? She didn't explain things very well. She's very scatterbrained, and so it was really hard to lose the job, and you dealt with like millions and millions of dollars worth of transactions every day. High risk, chaos, it was awful, and nobody wanted it. It was a live grenade in the middle of the department, and nobody wanted to dive on it. And it was just one of those points where it's like, finally, I was like, I'll do it. And my boss said, okay, cool, we can rotate it out every couple of months. Well, he never did, because I was doing such a good job with it. He didn't want me to do it, but it was miserable. I hated it. But dig this. It was an associate director level job. So it was 2 levels above where I was at. I was doing an associate director's level job for an employee's pay, and they never fixed it. They never fixed it. I took over all of her responsibilities. I wrote an SOP for that job, and I went through. And again, on any given day, I was doing anywhere from $10 to $20 million worth of balancing transactions that I would have to manually calculate and document. It was extremely stressful. And again, just like this director job at $19 an hour, they just are expecting somebody to do that. So they want all the responsibility with none of the pay. The same with me. And it's a sad sob story, right? Like everybody's doing the same thing. I mean, but it's becoming more and more blatant as time goes on. So step number 4 here is to invest 15% of your household income for retirement. Okay, this is after you saved $1,000. This is after you've paid off all your debt. This is after you've saved up 3 to 6 months of expenses. This is step 4. Now you're starting to invest. You're maximizing your workplace 401k with your matches first. So I haven't looked because I'm not managing money, but it used to be $14,000 a year. I want to say it's up to like 16.5. I don't have that number. So they want you to max that out. They're saying 14. What do you say? 15%, right? But also you maximize your 401k. Well, that's 16,000. Well, 15% of what? Of $100,000? Most people, the average 15% of $100,000 would be $15,000. So that would about max out your 401k. Okay, but most people, they're saying the average income is going to be actually closer to like $60,000, 60 to 70,000. It's somewhere in that range. Call it 65. Okay, you're nowhere near maxing that out. Plus, he says invest the rest in Roth IRAs and then use growth stock mutual funds. Okay, that's not bad advice, but I mean, where is the money coming from? Like, where is it coming from? Okay, step number 5 says use 529 plans or ESAs and done concurrently with steps 4 and 6. In other words, you're investing for your child's future. 529 plan or ESAs or educational savings accounts where you're investing for your child's future. And I'm like, okay, we've already addressed the steps 1 through 4 are almost impossible, and now you're also asking us to go through and save for our child's college fund. Look, I've managed money. I've helped people go through and invest in 529s and college savings accounts and various different accounts for kids, Coverdell's and 401 or IRAs and other things like that for minors, custodial accounts. I've done all of that over the years. Okay, but like today, there's too much month at the end of the money. Like it's like my wife and I, we're just trying to go through and to make sure that the mortgage and the bills and the kids have something to eat. Like where is the rest of this? And remember, you can't even get to step number 5 until you've completed steps 1 through 4, right? Now, step number 6, you want to pay off your home early. So you're going to put any extra money towards your mortgage principal, and you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars in interest payments, which is correct. There's a secret in the mortgage industry. If you go through and you start paying off the principal on your mortgage aggressively, you will go through and save tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest payments if you're able to do it. Great advice. All of this, none of this is bad. This is the point I'm trying to make. None of these steps are bad, right? They're all great steps to be able to prepare your financial wealth. Where is the extra money to do that? Where is it, right? And then finally, step number 7 is to leave an inheritance for your future generations, give generously to causes that you support. Okay, again, all of those things, you want to be able to give back in this, that, and the other. Completely agree. Every single thing I just said, I feel like is good advice. Every single bit of it. And I've had this exact conversation with so many people over the years on building their investments and so forth. The problem is that in today's society, this sounds tone deaf. Right? For if Dave Ramsey walked into the room today, and again, I followed him for years. He's a great guy. I have nothing bad to say about him or these baby steps, right? But for him to walk into a group of people today and to say, hey, how's everybody doing? Hey, let's go over the baby steps and break it down. It's completely tone deaf because most people can't do this, right? It's kind of tantamount to the whole let them eat cake kind of a thing. It's like they're all starving to death, and it's like, well, let them eat cake, you know? It's just, at the end of the day, it's like an insult to injury, right? When people can't afford to eat. Again, we make too much for public assistance, but not enough to eat. And the thing is, if you really look at it, they want it like this. They want it to be so that it's hard on you in the middle class, so that you give up. Because in order for you to be able to get out of the middle class and into the next bracket, you have to participate in life differently. You have to get it. You have to start your own business, and you have to like dive through and get through all the red tape. You got to spend thousands of dollars setting up LLCs and trusts. You've got to go through and get lawyers and accountants. There's a lot of intimidation and red tape that goes into it. Believe me, I know. I've looked into it for myself. And I would submit to you that I have a level of financial acumen that allows me to participate in that world and understand at least enough of it to be able to, articulate and have a conversation. And it's still intimidating to me. For the people that don't deal with money on a consistent basis, this is the thing. Money is this 8-headed monster that is just lurking about, right? That's trying to go through and to consume you at all times. And you have people that have varying degrees of intimidation and fear regarding this. And that's exactly by design, right? If you're constantly broke and you're constantly poor, you're going to never participate in a life like somebody that feels like they have a seat at the table. Think about that. When the Canaanite woman came to Jesus and was like, hey, man, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. She's like, hey, man, she's like, my daughter is sick. She's sick or has a demon, I forget. Might have been kind of interchangeably there. And Jesus is like, hey, woman. He's like, I'm here for the Jews, is what he said. And he said, it's not good for the master to throw, you know what? Here, let's do this. Let's actually do this. Let me not do this. I'm going to read the actual scripture. Jesus and the Canaanite woman. Here, I'm just going to actually read it because it's a great story, and I feel like it's kind of interesting with where we're at today. Hold on. It's Matthew 15, so let's just go to Matthew 15. 15, I think it's this one right here. Yeah, here we go. See, this is one of my favorites in the grand scheme of things. I really like it. This is going to be out of the NIV. I'm just going to read NIV. This is Matthew 15, verses 21 through 28. It says, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and a Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. And the woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. See, and I want to talk about that point specifically because I don't think Jesus was being disrespectful. You can go out and go down this rabbit hole because he's like, well, gosh, Jesus called her a dog. I think he was doing it for his disciples, and this is a kind of a congruent opinion that a lot of folks have out there that have studied this in depth. Because a dog was like a colloquialism of the time for the Canaanites. And his disciples are like, get her out of here, dude. Like, don't let her be here. So if you follow Jesus and you read the Gospels, you see that he's got a lot of love in his heart for everybody. And you also see that he's very coy. He's very cunning in the way that he responds. Jesus is the GOAT, man. Like, I don't know, that seems like a weird way to put it, but he truly is the greatest of all time. I mean, figuratively, literally, everything you want to look at it. If you really, truly go through and read the Gospels, it's mind-blowing, the stuff that he comes up with. Again, the Pharisees and the Sadducees would often say, man, they would leave astonished. Like they didn't even know what to say because he just completely dumbfounded them, right? But see, he saw this woman that came up and said, hey, listen, I know I'm not worthy to sit at this table, right? But you know what? I know that even I'm eligible for the crumbs on this table. And I think so many people today are in that same mindset, and that we don't feel like we're eligible to sit at the table, right? And we've been subsisting on the crumbs forever, right? But now they're starting to make the crumbs more expensive. Now the crumbs are starting to become unattainable. And we're like, wait a minute, I understand that I'm never going to be a billionaire and have a private plane and all that kind of stuff. I'm never going to sit at the table. But now, you guys are starting to go through and make it to where the crumbs aren't even possible. It's interesting. If you look back in the Old Testament in particular, and I'm paraphrasing, but they made it to where when you would go through and harvest in a field, that you were required to go through and to leave scraps around the field. They called it gleaning because it would give the people that didn't have enough money or didn't have much, widows, orphans, single women, this, that, and the other, people that were just down and out, it would give them the opportunity to be able to go back through and basically pick the last remaining pieces. They were able to glean what was left of the harvest, and that was required. Because Jesus said himself, he's like, listen, take care of the poor, because when you do, he said, take care of the poor, they'll always be with you, right? It's like, would you give unto the least of these? It's like you're giving to me. And I'm paraphrasing all this. I'm paraphrasing, but you can see a really good example of the gleaning aspect when you look at Ruth, right? So they specifically went through and made it so that they were leaving a little bit extra for her and dropping, certain pieces of the harvest so that she was able to go through and pick it up. They're starting to not do that anymore. The crumbs from the table are starting to be gobbled up, right? They're starting to make sure that that we can't eat anymore. What did I say earlier in this? They've put a cinder block on the accelerator for our economy, and they're just letting it explode. Tell me I'm wrong, okay? I mean, certainly you can, but you've got CEOs that have been stepping down for the last several years of major corporations. You've got billionaires that are building bunkers all over the world. They're building these damn flock cameras everywhere. A lot, some of the postulation out there is that the flock cameras are actually being put so that they can watch us basically kill ourselves or unalive each other, right? In a Hunger Games style battle from the safety of their bunkers. Now, I know that's tinfoil hat. Might get me flagged. I have no idea. Nobody knows, I think, is the end of the day. But what we can see is a very important picture that is being painted. We're not allowed to even have the scraps anymore. And again, I've worked in corporate America, and anybody that's ever worked for a big company knows this intimately. Oh, man, we had a banner year. We made billions of dollars in profits, and we couldn't have done it without your hard work. So here's a pizza party. And it's like, well, can we get a raise? Oh, there's nothing in the budget for raises this year. There's nothing in the budget. Or here's 1% to 2%. Here's a 1.5% raise. It's like inflation's up like 13, 14, 15%. Yeah, here's 1.5 and some pizza. You can get some lukewarm pizza over here in the break room from Little Caesars, nonetheless. We're not even going to get the good stuff. Here's some Little Caesars pies for you. You can see that they're not even giving us the scraps anymore. Years ago, you would get a bonus, like an actual bonus, right? And it might be 3 to 5% of your annual salary plus then a raise. But now they don't even do that anymore. I see videos out there where it's like people work and it's like the annual rating scale is from like 1 to 5, where like 3 is meets expectations, 4 is exceeds expectations, and 5 is like you need to be the CEO of the company, like instant promotion kind of a thing. It's like, oh my gosh, you were grossly underqualified or overqualified for your position. And I saw a video and this guy had a team and he's like, look, my team always crushes it. We work like 80 hours a week. We're there 7 days a week a lot of the time. We have carried the company like single-handedly, our team has. And so when it came time for annual review, I gave them all 5s because, I mean, that's the highest bonus. It's the highest whatever. And they came back and said, you can't do that. And he said, why? They're like, oh, well, we don't give out 5s. We don't give out 5s. Like the most you can get is exceeds expectation. And he's like, what do you mean? Like literally most of those contracts that have contributed to the bottom line, my team did that. Like single-handedly, my team did that. You have millions and millions and millions of dollars on your books today because of my team. My guys did that. My guys. So yes, they deserve that 5, and they're like, sorry, we can't do it. Okay, so you can't do the 5. You can't get the bonuses and the raises, and you can't climb the corporate ladder. You got directors making $19 an hour. How are you supposed to go through this 7 baby steps through Dave Ramsey? How are you supposed to do it? And I think it's good. I think the baby steps are good. I think it's important. People need to have direction. I told people to go do the baby steps, but none of us can do it. And because we can't do it, we feel like pieces of shit. We feel like pieces of shit. We feel like failures, and we feel like we are completely lost in this world. Look at that video that I just played for you. You know, that compilation of everybody talking. They were wiped out, man. And they all feel like pieces of shit. You can tell it. You can see it in their face. They're despondent. They're depressed. They're just like, their eyes, they're searching for meaning. You know, I wander around the house all the time. My wife's like, hey, what do you want? And I'm like, purpose and meaning. She's like, I mean for dinner, you idiot. It's like, I in particular, and I can only speak from my personal vantage point, but it's like that. I was created just like you were created with a specific purpose. And I don't know. I don't know why God chose to put a microphone in front of my face, but he did. I've had a microphone in front of my face with 50,000 watts or more for over half my life, for almost 30 years. And I don't know why. But I've got a purpose and a plan in my life just like you do. And we've had to go through and to work so hard at just surviving, and they've made it harder and harder. And as that engine redlines, it gets closer and closer to exploding. We're just begging for scraps that aren't coming anymore. Or when they do come, it's like it's, twice the price for the crumbs from the table. And we're like, I still can't get past step 3 on the baby steps. I'm a piece of shit. Everybody else, like I look across the way and I see on social media that they're going on vacations. They must be doing better. Yeah, most of that shit is debt. Most of that shit is debt. And the other side of that, too, to get esoteric, is I think a lot of that is NPC. I do. And you can say, well, that's unsubstantiated. Yeah, maybe. But man, I'll tell you what, just start tugging at that thread and see where it takes you. I think a lot of this world has been designed to go through and to exacerbate that feeling of you not having enough, of that feeling of fear, that feeling of lack, that feeling of you're a piece of shit. I think that's what has been created. I think the NPCs have replaced us in a lot of ways. I think that they've put us in positions to where we don't have the opportunity to rise through the ranks because they're sitting in those positions. They're driving the cars. They're living in those houses. They're getting those promotions. Ask yourself this question. How many bosses have you had over the last 10 or 20 years? that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. You're way more qualified than they are. I know it's not just me. Because I've had these conversations with people over and over and over, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense, right? And we've talked ad nauseum for the last, 18 episodes as this podcast is growing about some impending event. I don't know what that impending event is. I don't know if that's the explosion of the engine of this economy. I don't know if it's an asteroid from space or 3-Eye Atlas or aliens landing on the White House lawn. I don't know. Is it some sort of a nuclear incursion in our borders or outside? I don't know. Is it an amalgamation of all of these things coming together? There's a lot of different possibilities here, right? I mean, I can tell you from my financial vantage point that we are headed for a crash like nothing we've ever seen. Because at least in 2008, when everything started crashing out, inflation was not where it is. And because of that fact, we're heading into a position to where we really need to start maintaining kind of conscientiousness and cognizance of how prepared we are. I came across this video, and he's right, and I agree with him in a lot of areas. And I just wanted to kind of share it with you, just kind of put it on your radar, because I think we're getting close.
Man, we're going to have to get to a point where we start to face the fact that America is on the decline. Ain't no saving this place. You're looking at the situation that's going on with the power grid. There's always issues with the power grid. You see what's going on right now in Indiana. I was reading a news article the other day, and they're talking about the...
Yeah, and just real quick, just to pause real quickly, Gary, Indiana has been without power now for like 11 days. Like 11 days, something like that. Think about that for just a second. That's insane. In 2026, and it's not getting more press than it should.
And they're talking about the potential of an 18-month power outage. I didn't say an 18 days. I said an 18-month power outage. We're going to have to start thinking about preparation. I understand that it's uncomfortable. I understand it's not something that necessarily that you want to talk about. But if you're going to survive what's getting ready to happen next to this place. Look at what happened in Venezuela. Look at what happened to Greece. Look at what happened to all of these other places across the world when the economy failed. This place is at war. This place is on the downfall. This place is having tumultuous times. Start to prepare. Thinking about water filtration. Thinking about ways that you can communicate if the entire grid failed. This means you can't pick up your cell phone. This means you can't use the internet. Maybe ham radio. Maybe GMRS. Some other way to communicate outside of your traditional ways. Start the preparation of your mind. Start the preparation of your body. Start the preparation of your family. If you love your family, if you love yourself, you will start preparing now. For far too long, we've laughed at the prophets. We've laughed at the preppers. I'm just saying that it seems like there's going to become a day that you're going to realize that the people that you call paranoid were simply just prepared. Most of the people on here prescribe to the tenets of the Bible, and even if you don't, the scriptures tell you to study the ways of the ant. The ant doesn't have an overseer, but it's still gathering all summer, and it's preparing all summer for the winter. We have this super El Nino going on that's had an entire heat dome on the entire United States that has produced historic levels of heat. And they also say that same storm system could potentially produce a historic winter. There are a lot of signs pointing towards this place is on the decline and disaster is on the way. You can pray all you want. You can hope all you want. That's fine. But make sure that you're doing it with action. Man, we
Yeah, man. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, he's right. You can pray all that you want, but you better be preparing yourself by taking action. What does that look like? Well, before, it used to be the 7 baby steps, right? You save $1,000 and you start paying off your debt, da-da-da-da-da. But all of that is, like, meaningless now. It's meaningless. Because if we save up, what are we saving up for? You're buying into an inflated economy. If you want to buy a house, I saw a meme the other day, or a video the other day, and the guy was talking to his dad. He's my age, his early 40s, and his dad's like, man, why are you still renting? Why don't you just buy a house? And he's like, because, Dad. He's like, I need, like, the average house is like $450,000, and he's like, I need like $77,000, something like that, as a down payment. And he's like, the most that I can save every month is like $400 a month, which is still by our like $400 a month if you're able to save after you've paid everything else. I mean, that's pretty good, in my book anyway. And again, I was a financial advisor. Like, I managed money for people. I mean, if you're able to do that, the regular Joe. And he said that my dad was like running the numbers and stuff like that, and he stopped after 17 years just to be able to do the down payment. Stop and think about that, man. This is crazy. It's crazy. 17 years. I mean, he's going to be 60 years old before he can make a down payment on today's dollars, right? On a starter home. It'll be 60. And that's at today's dollars. So if it was $77,000 today, what would it be then? 150 if things continue on where they're going? My point being is this. The baby steps, the life that we used to live, again, we're caught between worlds, just like what this podcast purports, right? This old reality and this new reality. I don't know what this impending event is that's coming. But like the dude was just saying in the video, people laughed at the prophets, they laughed at the preppers, and the people that actually put emphasis on this stuff. I was one of them, right? I used to look at these like prophets going, man, these guys are nuts. What are they hearing from God? Until God slapped me upside the head and I started hearing from God. And it was like, am I losing my mind? What's happening here? Now, I am not a prophet. I'm not. I just think that every single one of us, and I'm a radio guy, like I've worked in radio for 28 years, and you can tune into, 101.5 or 97.1 or whatever on your radio dial, and a signal comes in. And I think God has a channel in every single one of you. And if you spend time with him, and you allow him to go through and to speak, and you shut up and you shut everything else off, he will speak. I just, if you seek him, you will find him. And it wasn't until he slapped me upside the head, and I'm grateful that he did. It's been a hard 6 years. I mean, it has been the hardest 6 years of my life. But I've grown closer to God during that time than any other time in my life too. So it's like, again, you kind of take the good with the bad. But I no longer think that the prophets are crazy. I no longer think that the preppers are crazy. And I don't think that we'll ever be fully prepared for what's coming. That guy probably has tons of stock. I mean, you hear chickens in the background. He's probably set by, normal standards of what prepping would be, right? He's probably set. He's not prepared for what's coming. The prophets have been saying that God's fixing to do something that he's never, ever done before. And I believe it. I don't know what that something is. He just told me back in 2020, before I heard any other prophet saying this, and again, I'm not a prophet, but he told me, he said, there will be an event. There will be an event. And he said, at that time, I'd misheard him because he told me later, he's like, you actually misheard me because this was early, but there will be an event. And at that time I heard, and all will be healed. And I don't know if this has changed or if I misheard him, but he said there will be an event, and I'm can't exactly remember because I didn't write it down, but it was like, and my children will be healed or something along those lines. Again, not a prophet. Don't quote me on that. This is just him talking to me. I don't know what's coming, man. They're talking about solar flares, and they're talking about like magnetic pole shifts, and they're talking about all kinds of stuff. You know, he said, prepare like the ant. Well, all the grasshoppers, man, all the grasshoppers have resigned, and they've all bought themselves bunkers, man. If you remember that movie Deep Impact, remember that? One of the reason it leaked out that there was this big event, this ELE, extinction level event, ELE, was because one of the big senators resigned, just out of nowhere, resigned. And so that reporter, Tay Leone, she went over there to go try to talk to him to see what was happening. And it was because she thought it was an affair, because she heard about Ellie, and she thought he was having an affair with that. And he left because he knew what was coming and wanted to go spend time with his family. We've got all these guys that have been leaving their posts over the last 5-6 years. And you've got a bunch of them that are building bunkers and moving to, all the various corners of the earth. I don't know what's coming, man. And part of me, I believe we should prepare. And I'm not trying to, be a purveyor of doom and gloom, but I think that it's incumbent upon each one of us, just like he said, if you love your family, if you love your life, that you need to take the appropriate steps to do that. Again, look at Cary, Indiana. It's been like 11 days they've been without power. That's crazy to me. I can't even wrap my head around that. We had a tornado in Nashville, and we lost power for a day, and I worked from home, and I was like freaking out. I was going to lose my job, and we didn't even lose power for 24 hours, and it was crazy. 11 days in 2026. That should tell you everything you need to know, how fragile our infrastructure is. So I don't know what you need to do. There's a zillion different methods that you can go through, and resources out there available for prepping. Like he said, you can pray, but he said let that prayer be accompanied by action. So I just say, make sure you got plenty of food, water, put aside. I've been collecting books and other things like that have information about like how to do stuff. This is how you build a fire. This is how you do, it's important to have that's analog and off the internet. But there's a lot of different resources that are out there and available to you. But just understand that no matter how much you prepare for this, you could build your own bunker, you can go through and do all of it, that I don't think any one of us are going to be prepared for what actually comes. It doesn't matter how much you do. And I know that sounds dire, but that is where you have to succumb and allow any and all fear that might be accompanying to that to erode, and to give the whole thing to God. Because if it's bigger than us and there's no way we can be prepared for it, then we have to trust that God is going to carry us through it. And I don't know what's coming. And he's told me point blank. He said, look, you're not there. There's nothing that you can do fully to prepare for it. But I just know that we can't keep moving in the direction that we're going now. People are exhausted. We can't even fulfill the 7 little baby steps like we used to. Because what kind of life is there to save for? And that breaks my heart. I spent the last 20 years trying to figure out how to prepare for our financial future and to help others prepare for their financial future. And I saw a meme the other day, and it said, it's like we're living in December, but we don't have a calendar, and we know Christmas is coming, but we don't know what day it is. It's like there's something out in the future, and we can all feel it. And I just trust I don't know what it is. I just trust that on the other side of this, that God's got this. God's got our back. Look, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I know that we covered some heavy topics, and I know that you're probably out there struggling, just to keep your head above water, just like all of us. Just know I'm praying for you. I pray about all these podcasts. God's got this at the end of the day. And even though we are caught in an incredible, crazy wave of this reality transition, God still got us. This is the Reality Halfway House.